Hello, this is my review of the Planet X2 game. Probably heard about this already, so it's not really new, but it took me quite a while to get a copy of it, and the reason for this was that it was simply sold out on the two shops they offered the game, and fortunately I got it second hand, so to say, from someone from the forum, 64, and I'm really happy that I got it, because this is the deluxe edition, and it comes with this pretty nice box with a very nice and detailed artwork, and it is basically kind of a recreation of this typical box design you have seen in the 80s or something like this. So if we compare this to Elite, for example, then it's almost the same shape, and there's this backside description and some screenshots of the game, and it's very similar. Or for example, the test drive, the dual as version 2. It's the same style, so it is really created with a lot of attention to the detail. I think it's really something you as a fan of C64 games, especially newer games, it's really something you need to have, and makes a good appearance on your shelf. But I mean, the most interesting part for me was playing the game, so to say, because I had a couple of attempts playing kind of strategy games or build up and defend and games on the C64, but they were kind of slow and really ugly in terms of graphics, or especially the handling was a little bit weird, so to say. But the 8-bit guy is well known on YouTube, for example. Explained a couple of his thoughts about the game, and I thought, well, this sounds really interesting, so let's give it a test. And basically I was really disappointed to see that it was sold out on two shops, and even contacting the shop asking whether they're going to get some new copies wasn't really successfully. And so fortunately I got it from someone from the forum, as I said, and now it is here. And now let's have a look inside the box. So it's really a well-built carton box. It's very solid, so it's not just some cheap paper or something like this. And inside the box we will find a tape. More about this later. The disc itself, I mean, that's the most important part of the game. So it's a hand-copied and hand-sealed disc with a custom label on it. And it got a manual as well. And this is not just a one-pager saying this is the game and how to start this. It is really a well-built manual with a couple of pages, as you can see. So we have 23 pages of content. And it starts at the very beginning with list of content, so to say, some notes from the author, a description how the memory map is laid out inside the C64, and the restrictions based on the memory. And then it says a couple of things about the tape and who was involved as well. And then it talks about how to load the game, and this is a very interesting part, because I got it as a floppy disk version, but I rarely use floppy disks nowadays. So the first task was to get this onto my Ultimate drive. So I was able to find a working floppy drive at my storage, and I copied the game using the Ultimate 2 Plus functions, and it took just a couple of seconds to create the disk image. and it was running out of the box, so to say. And the interesting thing is, especially when you have a fast loader cartridge emulated, or you use a real fast loader cartridge with a real floppy drive, the loading of the game is amazingly fast. So we will see how the loading progress looks like. And as a next step, I thought, well, since SD to IAC devices are so common nowadays, let's have a try and put this on my SD drive. And surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, but it's a very good and interesting fact that it runs on the SD to IAC devices as well. And you can even use fast loader there, and it makes loading the game so amazingly fast. It's really I was blown away how fast the game loads. And then you got some more information inside the manual. So how is the keyboard layout? So the game is controlled completely by keyboard. So there's no need to use a joystick or a mouse. And the controls are so well designed that you don't even think about needing a mouse or something like this. And this is basically the main reason for this is that you control the units one by one, so there are no grouping or something like this. But there isn't really a need for this, so the game is designed the way that you access buildings or tanks or builders or something like this and control them one by one, and giving them certain tasks, and then everything runs kind of itself. So putting a tank into a sentinel mode for protecting your fortress, so to say, or your factory, and then it is really autonomous, so to say. And this makes this game really very fluid in terms of gameplay. So you don't have to fiddle around with complicated controls, how to group units and how to degroup units and how to assign tasks, because you just handle one unit at a time. And the whole gameplay is really designed the way that this is really a very nice experience. And you got some more information about how the screen is laid out, and what kind of items you find on the maps, and what you have to do with those items, what things you can build, and what's the reason for those things to build. And then you have some explanations about your opponents, so to say, the enemies you have to face on the maps, and what's the purpose they kind of following, and what they're trying to do. And finally, with an interesting spoiler warning, you got some of the maps already printed in the manual. So if you're really new to this genre of games and you really have problems of finding the right spots on the maps, or simply orientation issues that you got kind of lost in the landscape, so to say, then you can refer to the manual and have a look at the maps. And so I'm not going to spend that much time explaining the maps so far, but just flipping through the manual, that you got an impression what kind of maps, or let's turn it around so maybe a little bit better, what kind of maps you can find inside the game. They really have different appearances, they have different ways how to play them, and they have different restrictions. And not all of the maps are covered in the manual, so inside the game there are a few maps that are not printed here, so you have to explore them by yourself. And this makes the game really very interesting. And because you have, based on the maps, for example, you have different strategies how to play the game, so to say. So you can either go for this creating resources and build your kind of fortress and have a good offensive style or defensive style. So it's a matter of what you really prefer. So you can build either tanks and being more this attack and win guy, or you can say, okay, well, I'm a little bit more on the defense side, and I build kind of a fortress with some walls, some sentinels, and then I'm going to harvest the resources available on the map. So there are different approaches. And as the next thing, we will have a look at the game, but before we do so, we'll just say a couple of words about this tape. So I haven't opened it, so it is still sealed, because I think the idea behind this is very interesting. So due to these limitations in memory of the C64, there is not that much music inside the game. So you got some intro music, which is quite short, and you got some in-game music which loops in about 60 seconds or something like this. And this becomes quite a little bit annoying after a while. So the idea was to create a soundtrack not just based on the SID of the C64, but using old ad-lib sound versions from the 80s and 90s, and so you can listen to the music while playing the game. And if you buy the game as deluxe edition or light edition, you get a download as well, and you can buy the soundtrack as MP3 or as WAV file format. And this is what I have done, since I'm missing the download options due to the second-hand buy. And so I bought the soundtrack as WAV file format, and so I can listen to the sound, listen to the music while playing the game and having the sound effects on the game. And this is a quite interesting idea, and this makes this package, so to say, makes it quite unique, so to say. And I mean, my personal preference would be a cartridge version, and the 8-bit guy has some explanation on his video, of his making of video, why he went not for the cartridge version, which is arguable. So some say, well, the deluxe edition is as expensive as a cartridge edition for other games, so forever. And I think, especially with the cartridge edition, it would be beneficial for the game as well to have additional resources to access, or to have more flexibility in terms of loading or something like this. So the only loading the game is doing is basically the map at the beginning of the game, and then there's no loading at all. And this makes the game flow, as I said, very fluid, so there are no interruptions due to loading. But I think, especially today with modern loaders, if you look at Sam's Journey, for example, where all the loading kind of takes place in the background without even interrupting the game or something like this, there are even more possibilities in terms of those games in this genre, so to say. And but anyway, it's not really a complaint, it's just a thought. And as I said, it's a very nice build and very high quality package. And now I think it's enough talking about the box. Let's talk about the game itself. And for this I'm going to use my gaming C64, and we're going to use my SD2 IC device as well. And as I said, it runs from the Ultimate cartridge as well, so you can put this on your USB stick and play it with the Ultimate 2 Plus, or just the older version as well. You can run this from a normal floppy drive disk, and you can play the game in an emulator as well, so that's really a lot of flexibility. And I haven't found any combination that's not working, so to say. And this is very, very unique, so nowadays, because most of the games, they're coming with some special loaders, and they are a little bit, let's say, a little bit hard to configure sometimes. And we have seen this for Serious, not for Serious, for Sam's Journey, where it is a little bit tricky to get this running on a real C64 when you have, for example, a built-in SD to IC device which can't be switched off, or if you have a setup with a couple of floppy disks, so it really runs just with one floppy disk attached, or using the Ultimate or the Turbo Chameleon, and then even then you have to switch off any additional devices. So this has been a struggle for some users. I haven't recognized this at the beginning because basically I do not have a fixed setup I'm using, so I just grab some C64s, even single boards from my shelf, and then I attach just one drive and it runs. But coming back to Planet X2, it really runs on almost any configuration, so to say. Okay, so then let's switch this on and see what we can find inside the game. Just need some power. There we go. Lights going on. So I'm just using my internal kernel switch to jump to the SD to IC improved kernel, and here we go, because here we can use this built-in browser. So by using the SD to IC kernel, we have access to a file browser, and so we simply can browse through the content of the SD to IC device. And I already placed Planet X2 disk image on this, and we just have to go into the disk image and run the first program. And now it's loading the program, and when we type run, it loads a couple of things, and then we are immediately inside the game. And this is really blazing fast, and I was really impressed to see how fast the game is loading. And so I'm just going to mute this a little bit. And so what we can see basically is the start screen, where we have 3 different options, and we have a credit screen, and that's basically all we can see at the beginning. And the most interesting thing is with the function key 3, we can swap through the different maps. As I already said, there are more maps than are covered by the book, and they come really in very different styles. So I have played just a few of them. So River Divide is probably the first map we can have a look at, and depending on the landscape, depending on the design of the map, your tactical approach may change. And what I really like is that they really come with a different appearance, so it's not this boring same thing over and over again. And so especially the forest is very greenish, so to say. The Rockies, they have a lot of rocks and areas where you can't move without bulldozing or something like this. Dust World is pretty desert-like, and the Frozen one is a winterish landscape with a lot of snow and even snowmen. And the Urban Ruins, it's a very interesting map. It looks like from a late 80s science fiction movies with a lot of destroyed buildings and all that stuff. It reminds me a little bit of a book from Stanislav Lem, and so I enjoyed playing this map very much. And the next thing we have to choose is the difficulty. So there are 3 different settings for this. We got easy, medium and hard. Medium is the standard setting, and I have to admit that playing easy is probably good for the beginning to get used to the controls, used to the landscape and all that stuff, but it is really unfair easy, so to say, because you start with so many resources that it is quite often not even necessary to harvest some resources because you already have enough. So, and my recommendation is really to play the game on medium settings, or when you're really looking for the challenge, so to say, then go for the hard settings. But hard is really a huge step forward, so to say. You really have to stretch your legs and really have to get your things together, because it is that much more challenging compared to medium, that the difference is really huge in my opinion. But anyway, so with F1 we can start the game, and now it's loading the map, and this map loading is not really affected by the device you're using. So whether you're using a real floppy or an Ultimate or Turbo Chameleon or an SD to IAC device, it makes no difference, because it just loads data into the memory, and this is the main restriction. But even this won't take that much time. And now we're ready to play. So with the typical WASD keys we can move our units around, or if you prefer to play with cursor keys, you can do the same. So I really recommend using this normal WASD key approach. And here you can see that the scrolling of the map is really fluid. So there are no hang-ups, there are no delays, nothing like this. You really can move around quite freely. And this is our builder unit, and this can be used for multiple purposes. So first thing is, you can harvest resources on your map, and you can deliver this to your home base, or you can build a couple of things with this one. So by pressing function key 1, we see the different options, and here we can see what we are able to build with this. And this is quite extensive, I would say. And let's go to our base. It was somewhere in the upper corner. And I think we need to build a bridge for this. So by pressing plus and minus, we can switch through our, let's say, assets. So these are buildings and our rocket launch stations. And this is very interesting, because if you get lost on the map and you can't find your way back to your home base, you can simply access your buildings, and you see in the lower left corner the coordinates of your base. And if you switch back to your unit, we see that we are at position 53 and 13. And we have to go to 22 and 17. So the height is already alright, but our horizontal position is wrong. So we have to cross the river, or we have to find a place where we probably can cross the river, and it looks like it is here. Oh, there's still some water between us, so let's use the build functionality and say let's build a bridge. Now it's working. And then we are able to cross the river and go up to our base. So we already learned that this was at position 17 and 22, and here we go. So at the base we can load off our resource by pressing enter, and then we can go to our factory and say process minerals. And this is how you harvest resources on the planet. So you can harvest different types of resources. So it's either the crystal or the mineral or the rocks in different densities, so to say. And this affects processing time as well as output you get out of it. And on the lower left corner, das gibt's doch nicht. You can see this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and this is your number of units. So you can have 10 mobile units within the game, and you can quick access by pressing the buttons. And if we go to our factory, for example, and say let's create a tank, then the tank is created and it adds another number to our bottom line. By pressing 3 we have access to our tank. So the tank moves with the same speed, so there are no restrictions in the matter of this. And the tank has an additional function. We can put this into sentry mode, and now it is fixed. We can access this, but we can't move it any longer. But if we think, well, the position is not the best one, so let's go back to tank mode and move it to a different place and put this into sentry mode. The interesting thing about a sentry mode is that the tank is now acting as an autonomous defense device, so to say. So in terms you get attacked or something like this, the sentry will automatically shoot at your opponent, so to say. And this makes it quite easy, because if we just jump to our factory, create another tank, and then we move this tank to a different position, let's say to this one, put this into sentry mode, then we can easily go back to our builder and drive around with our builder without paying that much attention to the defense of our home base. So now we can simply move through the landscape, gather more resources, for example, build new things, and the main purpose of this approach is that you need some devices to explore the landscape. And if you're not referring to the maps inside the manual, for example, you have no idea where the enemy bases are located. And so you need some devices just to go to drive around and have a look. And here we found found the first enemy base, and this is protected by kind of the same sentinel devices. And now we know that we have to attack this part of the map, so to say. And there are different opportunities, so we can either go back to our factory, which is actually under attack. So we really need to do something. Oh, we lost the first tank. That's a bad situation. You have to keep in mind you can't repair things on the game. So now we really have to do something. So now we destroyed it. Okay. But now it looks a little bit devastated. So you can't repair something. So we lost one building now, and we can now use our remaining building and say, okay, create a new builder, and now we do not have enough resources. So this is kind of a dead end now, because we can't build something, and I guess we can't process something, because this X we have seen in front of the factory is now blocked. But we may find let's take something with us. Oops. So let's see whether we can repair this. Yes, so it's kind of healed. And since we've learned where the enemy base is located, we know that we may place our protection to a different position. So let's go to the tank and put this in this corner. And let's go back to our builder and let's drop the mineral here. And this is a little bit risky right now, because processing the minerals will take some while. And I hope it is working. And since we just have one building left, we can't build something anymore, because we are processing the minerals. So as a main approach, you may just create a factory close to your landscape given resources. Then you avoid all that travel, and you can access the resources quite fast and process them. And you have still some buildings, some factories left to build things, to create things. So at the beginning of the game, the attacks are quite weak, so that's not really an issue. You can easily protect yourself against a couple of enemies with just 3 or 4 sentinels or something like this. But later on, the attack waves, they become even harder, or even more intensive in terms of a number of opponents. And therefore you kind of need to recreate some tanks to replace broken ones or something like this. And this is the point where the game becomes quite stressful, so to say, because you really have to balance creation and processing of resources up to a point where it is really hard. And as you can see at the bottom line, with just 10 movable units, you have some restrictions here as well, because every single sentinel counts into this unit limit. So, and you really have to balance where you put your units and your buildings. And you get, if you're far away from your home base, so to say, and you're attacked, as we can see, the opponents are able to cross the water. And this is an ability we don't share with them, but they are pretty slow in water. And by just guessing the direction from which he came from, we may assume that there's another base somewhere in the top right hand corner, something like this. And so he was able to destroy one of our sentinels. So we really need to make place for maybe another one. So we jump to our factory and create a new one. And here we go. That's the number. So if you got lost in your numbering of your units, you can simply press enter and browse through the visible part of the map, and then you see a sentry tank, and then if you hit enter you jump to this unit, and therefore we see that's number 3. And it looks like we need another one to protect the entrance of the factory, but this is probably going too far now into the game, and I don't want to spoil that much. I will show you how it looks like when you lose or win. So we may just cancel the game by pressing stop and saying yes. And you got some final screen where you see the remaining resources you and your enemy has. So it's not a count of what you have used in the game, so it's not like set where you see that this amount of whatever units has been built and destroyed or something like this. This is just the final wrap up, so to say, and kind of a debriefing. And as we can see here, we had the mission was to destroy 3 pyramids, and we just have destroyed not even one, but anyway. And we had just 1 building left and 5 mobile units. And we see even the amount of minerals, methane gas, and energy. And these resources are required to build, for example, the rocket silos, or we need to harvest energy as well by building solar panels or kind of a gas extraction station, something like this. So the complexity is not that big, but it provides a lot of opportunity to handle the maps in different styles. So in terms of playing the game over and over again, you have a lot of variety to have different approaches, and it's not as repetitive as other games maybe, where we have mostly just one single strategy how to win the map, like it was for Set, for example. I really love the game, but sometimes it's really a little bit boring. As soon as you have figured out how to win it, you can repeat this over and over again, and there's almost, especially in later levels, there's almost no chance to change this approach. So here at Planet X2 you have different different opportunities and therefore different strategies, and this makes this game very, very interesting. So as I've said, the deluxe edition seems to be sold out, so it's not possible to buy this anymore. But the European shop, I will post the link in the description section, is offering a light version where you get the manual and the disc and the download as well, so you can kind of instantly play the game without waiting for the post delivery. And it comes for quite fair price, so to say. I think the light version is 20 or 25 euros, something like this. And if you consider the amount of work put into this game, it's really a fair price. And for additional 5 euros you can buy the mentioned soundtrack as an MP3 or as a WAV file, so you don't have to be angry or be disappointed that the tape isn't available any longer. And it is quality wise, and the music is quite the same style like the intro music with some variations, but using more voices, more instruments, and it's really worth the whole package if you're into games like this. And so if you have any questions, whatever, please feel free to comment. And if you want to be stay tuned, then please subscribe, and have fun playing. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.